Greetings! Welcome to Nina's World. This podcast provides a short respite from the trials and tribulations of everyday life. We're going to step back in time to the 1950s and 60s. And now, our story. Nina begins second grade. Can I have some more crackers, please? The countdown was on. Every day ticking closer to the first day of school. Nina and her sisters had gone to the school to help the teachers prepare their classrooms. Nina had met one of the new students named Buddy. She had decided they would be friends, but Nina was a little anxious because she didn't know who else would be in her classroom. On that first day of school, the skies opened and rain poured like it was auditioning for the great flood scene in a Cecil B. DeMille movie epic. No one had dry clothes by the time they arrived at school, and all the children were herded into the multipurpose room to meet their teachers, each who held a large sign with their name and grade level. The room was already crowded, and parents were shooed away with promises that their children would most certainly be returned to them at the end of the day. Kindergartners were already leaving the room, some crying, some with plastered smiles. One poor child who would forever be known as the kid who wet his pants on the first day. He was taken to the office so the school secretary, Mrs. Ridgway, could contact his mother to bring a change of clothes. The overheated room smelled like soggy socks, stale cardboard, and sour mops. Nina began to feel dizzy amid the chaos and, without warning, vomited. Some children in their first day of school clothes moved away. To add to the excitement, Nina fainted. Her fall buffeted by the children who had nowhere to run. Shrieks brought teachers quickly, one calling over her shoulder to get the nurse. But Mrs. Cronin was already in the room and immediately made space around Nina, telling the children to go to their teachers. She gently lifted Nina's head, checking for bumps or swelling, before placing it on her lap, not caring if her clothes would be touched by the vomit. A cafeteria worker brought towels, some moistened. Mrs. Cronin gently placed a moist towel on Nina's forehead and used another to wipe her mouth and chin. There wasn't much residue, but she used a third towel to wipe Nina's clothes a bit. The principal, Miss Garrison, hurriedly instructed the teachers to remove their children and not to worry about lining up. Jim, the custodian, moved past the students as they exited the room, carrying a bag of sawdust and a broom in one hand and pushing a wet mop bucket in the other. Nina's younger sister, Martha, was already in her first grade classroom and didn't know anything. Dorothy, now entering fourth grade, wondered what all the fuss was about until a sixth grade boy came running past shouting, "Some girl just threw up all over the floor. Gross." Dorothy felt sorry for that little girl, but knew that she should stay with her classmates until led to their classroom. Mr. Hughes, the fourth grade teacher, appeared from the fray and called Dorothy aside. "Dorothy, it was one of your younger sisters. I don't know her name. She isn't feeling well. Don't worry, Mrs. Cronin is with her now. I think it would be good for you to be together with her. You can come to the classroom when you're ready." Dorothy heard what Mr. Hughes said, but didn't understand. It must be someone else's sister. Her sisters were fine, were happy, even excited about being in school. Mr. Hughes gently touched Dorothy's shoulder, pointing to an area of the room Dorothy walked over slowly, not believing that it was Martha or Nina, but Mr. Hughes did say it was one of her sisters. Suddenly she was running towards the circle of adults, Jim spreading sawdust on the floor over the vomit, the cafeteria workers bringing more towels, and, God love her, a cup of water. Dorothy saw Nina trying to sit up, Mrs. Cronin now supporting her back and giving Nina just a sip of water, and then another, before placing the cup on the floor. Dorothy was so rattled, she wanted to drink the water herself. It was like being in a movie theater when the reel of film was malfunctioning. Mrs. Cronin looked up. She's okay, Dorothy, don't worry. Probably just overheated. Her name's Nina, isn't it? We're going to take her to my office so she can rest a bit before going to class. I want you to come too. Is that all right with you, Miss Garrison? Oh my, yes indeed. It's a very good idea to have Dorothy stay with Nina. Holding her gently, the adults raised Nina to her feet, supporting her as she walked to the nurse's office. They placed her on the bed and put a blanket over her. Miss Garrison said, "Don't we have some clothing drive items left from last year? See if there's anything that will fit. Nina can rest as long as she likes. Her mother may want to take Nina home or bring her some of her own clothes if she's well enough to stay in school. What do you think, Dorothy? I'm going to make the morning announcements. I'll be back in a few minutes." Dorothy turned away, looked out the window. She knew her dad was at work. They only had one car. It was still raining, though not as hard as before. But how could her mom leave her youngest sisters alone to bring clothes to school or take Nina home? Or how could her mom carry her youngest sisters and a bag of clothes all this way? And Nina was now at the sink, sipping water, swishing it around her mouth and spitting it out. Mrs. Cronin, standing as close to her as a shadow, gave her more water to drink, Nina holding the cup herself this time. Nina now sitting on the wooden chair as Mrs. Cronin gave her some saltines, and Nina wished they also had some peanut butter on them, but was suddenly so hungry. Miss Garrison returned and looked at Dorothy, who began to blather. No, my mom can't come to school. She'd have to call my dad from work, and it would have to be an emergency. And look, Nina seems okay now. Things had just gotten too much in the multi-purpose room, too hot, too smelly. Oh, I'm sorry, Miss Garrison. I didn't mean any offense, just that," Miss Garrison said softly. "It's okay, Dorothy. Sometimes things just happen. Mrs. Cronin, how's our Nina doing? I'll have to call her mother, though, because she does need to know what happened. Is Nina okay?" Nina stood up, wiping her mouth with a paper towel, now as bright as a new penny, as if nothing happened. "I'm sure hungry. Can I have some more crackers, Mrs. Cronin?" The adults looked at each other with surprise and burst out laughing. Dorothy, relieved that her sister was her sister again, gave Nina a hug, adding, "Nina Bina, I think you're ready for second grade." The end. Thank you for visiting with us today. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to this podcast and share it with everyone you know. Return next week for another story from Nina's World. This story was written and read by Christine McKee, with gratitude to Dr. Ethel Ratkin of Bucks County Community College for editorial consultation and encouragement. Additional heartfelt support from family, friends, and members of my writing groups. Technical support was provided by Mr. Dan Tarrant of Personally Catholic. Sound engineering by Mr. Andrew Kimlock of AK Productions. May you embrace peace in your heart in your home, and in your world.